This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
You're the guy on the Affordable and Fair Housing Committee. I know you.
Oh, no.
What?
We'll start
We
making
can wait for
threats.
that.
Yes, now we're on. Today is June 23rd, is the Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership, and it is 6:01 p.m. Is anyone willing to take notes?
I can take notes if you think I can take notes.
I think you can take
Okay.
notes.
I'm also taking notes.
I mean, I also take notes, but like it's helpful to have a note
Someone
taker.
for me
Yes.
to take. Yep.
Thank you. All right. I brought agendas in case anyone needed them since we're in person. And Jackie did send out the April meeting notes. Did everyone get those a little while ago?
Yep.
Okay. Have a chance to look at them?
Yes.
All right. So do we have a motion to approve the April meeting notes?
Yes.
Do we have a second?
I second.
All right, I don't have to do a roll call anymore. Oh, all those in favor of approving the April meeting notes?
Aye.
Aye. Great, thank you. Approved. I will send to Barbara. I probably owe her several months because I usually get. Great. So, I mean, I only have a few things on the agenda. One, I know not everyone was able to make it to the Housing Coalition meeting last month, so I thought we could just do a brief recap and then talk about what's happening now, which Graham and Brad could do because they are working on it. But, I mean, I'll just say that I think it went really well. We had about 30 people, 25 to 30 people, and I think that we had some folks that we specifically invited that would be there, and then people brought new faces. So I thought we had a fairly good representation of the people we invited and the sort of the people that we expected to come. I think one of the things to work on next is like who didn't come that we want to include. But I thought it was a good discussion. Back up my notes. We talked about, I mean, CHAPA facilitated the meeting, which was super helpful, and they did a really great job. And they had things up along the walls where people could self-identify homeowners and renters and race and age and where they lived. And I thought we had a decent amount of renters. I thought like our renters to homeowner ratio was pretty good. It wasn't like all homeowners or, which is kind of what usually happens at some meetings. And I thought some good things came up around like community concerns, both perceived and real. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if other folks want to chime in.
What concerns did people bring up? Like for example?
For example, I mean, there was why do we need more housing? Why do we want to get bigger? Why do we, why do we want more growth? Came up. Why, or is the housing only going to be for people in Easthampton? Why do we want to have housing for people who don't currently live in Easthampton?
Yeah.
All said like in a respectful tone.
Yeah,
but it was,
I don't think they realize the implication
of what they're saying.
Yeah.
And also, I think it was some people may have been brainstorming community concerns and
Yes.
not just bringing up their own personal concerns at that particular moment. So
Yeah.
it was unclear to me whether or not the person that brought up the outside residents, if they
Actually felt that
if
way.
they felt that way personally, or if they were like, this is a community concern, but still, it's something that was brought up.
Am I allowed to?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think just a little bit of contextual background behind that is there's been a lot of talk for like developing of affordable housing and making them like deed restricted, that for the first lease that they only be rented out to Easthampton residents. And at least this is my understanding. I think that comes from a place of class consciousness, that there are people in Easthampton who can't afford to live here anymore and that would be pushed out. And they wanted to incorporate policy ideas like this so that way people in Easthampton who live here can stay here. But then the implications of doing something like that that because Easthampton is, I don't know, 95% white or whatever the number is, that prevents people who are different than us from being able to come into the community as well. So
Meaning by their choice feeling comfortable coming to a white, such a white.
that if those affordable housing units were set aside specifically for Easthampton residents, that disproportionately benefits only white residents.
Got it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
good.
yeah.
Really good
Just
point.
because that's what we look like in this community. So it's kind of a double-edged sword between, class consciousness and our own racial.
Diversity.
Yeah. So those are some of those kinds of things to be mindful of when we go forward. Sorry.
No, it's good. I mean, I think it's good context, and also, for state regulations, if it's a building that's financed with any type of state or federal money, only 70% of the units can be set aside for Easthampton residents. So you can't, against the rules, to say only Easthampton residents. So that's, for exactly that reason, so that you're not keeping people out.
It's interesting to know that there's a framework around that already, though.
Yes. But that is the thing you will hear, and certainly during the Parsons Village permitting, that came up over and over. Why do, we only want Easthampton residents to live here. Why would other people, my personal feeling is they're not talking about people from Southampton moving to Easthampton.
Right.
It's sort of a veiled racist comment, because what they're worried about is people from Holyoke or from Springfield moving here, not people from West Hampton moving to Easthampton. That's not what they're talking about.
When in my last social work job, we did a lot of housing stuff, and a lot of people wanted to live in Easthampton specifically. And I ended up, I figured out it's because it's white. These were white people wanting to. And so that, once that dawned on me, I thought, okay, this is something to work around. They don't just love Easthampton.
So, I don't know what else came up. I thought there was some great feedback from developers. There was some developers in the room. I think Jamie came up with a new term, housing trauma. Some of them were clearly had zoning trauma that occurred to them in the 90s and early 2000s that they're really still managing, how difficult it was, or how we had this thing and now we don't have this thing, and now you can't do this thing that we used to be able to do. And so I think it was good that they came, because it's really good to hear their perspective, and also, the idea is to move on and move forward. So there were some things around that came up, which means that no zoning is a problem. That is one of the things that keeps affordable housing from being built. Anybody else have things else came up that was good to share?
I think related, you said, why do we want to grow?
Yeah.
I think there were some educational pieces about the fact that we're not growing, we're losing population, but we still need more housing, because the housing formation unit, the number of new housing units that are formed is larger than we're forming a lot of single and two-family households and not making, multi-generational households. And so a lot of the I feel like a lot of the older concerns were, well, if we build more housing, then we're going to have, we're going to run out of room in our schools, or it's going to raise the cost to educate our kids. But I think Easthampton's in a good place right now with the new high school and 8th grade, and we have extra capacity. And again, we're not really growing; we're still just spreading out more, and that requires more units.
So definitely a lot of educational pieces that the coalition can work on how to talk about these issues, and counterpoint when people say, why do we need more? Why do we need this?
I found that in talking with my day-to-day, the biggest challenge is getting over the stigma of having low-income housing, and people associate that immediately with not good people, but that's not the case at all.
Yeah, I know.
The
like
people
I s-
that work at Dunkin', or like the people that, yeah.
Frankly, our school teachers.
Yes.
Yeah, when you look at the income that classifies as area median income at 80%, there's a great deal of us that are already in that area. So, I think it's really just dispelling what affordable housing tenants would look like. It's basically our parents or,
People who make under like $25 an hour.
People who
Right,
serve you
right.
at a
It's really-
restaurant.
yes,
Right.
exactly.
People
Yeah,
who take care of their children,
right.
teach their children,
Yeah.
work at Riverside, or this building.
Yeah.
City councilors.
It's hard to live on that stipend.
$6,000 a year stipend?
Yeah.
I was talking to someone about like the Valley CDC project where they're looking at multiple parcels. And, she was asking a bunch of questions and we were talking about it and she just said, well, I just want it to be, I just want it to be really kept up. I don't want it to be run down. Again, so I think it's just like myths about what affordable housing looks like. And I said, well, drive by Person's Village.
Yeah, I was just
Like,
gonna say that. It's
yeah.
beautiful. I
Like,
live right next door. It's
That's
great.
the same developer that's going to do this
Yeah.
other project. So drive by there, drive by,
That's
some
what
of
I
their
say to
other.
everybody. I'm just like, look at Parsons Village.
Yeah.
There's no crime issues there. It's
better
beautiful.
than- yeah.
It's nicer than my house.
Street, yeah.
Look at Treehouse,
Yeah.
Ripley Cottage.
Right.
Right. Even Mountain View condos, I know it's condos, but that was an affordable housing project.
But there were some really bad
Oh, really?
housing projects in the 60s and 70s that gave affordable housing just generational and bad names.
Yeah, when you look at affordable housing units in areas like Holyoke or, a lot of these old mill towns, and they're kind of dilapidated. But also, they were built for low-income housing in the 30s to house mill workers.
Right.
So they're almost 100 years old now.
And the policies have changed and the thinking and the design standards have changed. I mean, if if Jessica was here from Valley CDC, she could tell you all about the enormous design standards that they're held to from the state level in terms of what the buildings have to look like and the energy efficiencies and
Even the native pollinating landscape.
right, the landscaping.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, it's rigorous. So the next step, Jamie and I had a recap with Dana and Lily like the following week after the meeting, and they shared some, thoughts about what our next steps were. And so then this afternoon we had another meeting with Kayam and Brad Shira and Kate Shapiro were invited, but couldn't make it. Did you get that invite from Jamie a couple weeks ago?
Me?
No,
Oh, sure.
Shira.
So Google Calendar, it might have gone to your spam.
All right, we'll follow up with you, Shira, about it. Just to figure out, 'cause at the meeting, those four had sort of said, hey, we're willing to help. And so thinking about what is next. So I can let one of you talk about what's next. if you want.
Yeah, so I was taking notes during our meeting. Dana from CHAPA sort of laying out the next 2 to 3 meetings, and she gave us, I haven't actually looked through them, but some sample agendas and things that we can build off of. So we're not just starting from scratch. But she highlighted some important next steps about building a mission statement to sort of create a cohesive thing that keeps the group together and something that everyone agrees on, so it doesn't just devolve into different opinions. And then I think we also decided that we needed someone to facilitate or I forget the exact word they used, but just keep track of the meetings and make sure people are being emailed and are on all the lists. So I volunteered to do that, at least to start, just to keep the momentum going. And then that's sort of I think what we got to.
Yeah. So figuring out, sending out an email to the group, the people who came or said, yes, I want to keep you on your mailing list to try to find a time to schedule in the next meeting.
Yeah.
one thing we need to keep in mind is that, so one of the big goals of this coalition is that it is not a city-sponsored committee, right? So they do not need to public notice. They can meet wherever they want. They can meet whatever they want. They don't have to tell anybody, by Thursday at 3 p.m. the week before that they need to meet. It gives a lot more flexibility to the group. But that also means that those of us who are elected officials or appointed, which is all of us, we have to be careful that we don't have a quorum at the meeting. So for the housing partnership, that means that only 3 of us can be there at one time. Because otherwise it basically would prompt, if there were 4 of us there, it would be a quorum, and then we'd be technically violating open meeting law because we'd all be attending a meeting together.
Sorry, which meeting is this? The next coalition one?
Yes, the next
Okay.
coalition one.
And it's particularly relevant for this group and city councilors, but other, if it was I don't know, the zoning board of appeals happened to have a quorum there, but nothing nothing was being discussed that was currently their business, then it's not, there's no conflict there, there's no violation of the meeting law.
Right.
It's only when there's things that would be under the purview of your group that are also being discussed at that meeting. So obviously city council has your hands on everything.
Yeah. And you guys do nothing but housing here,
Right.
so.
Exactly.
It is literally what you do.
Yeah.
So we just want to keep that in mind, and we can certainly communicate probably to Kayam if we are planning to go, and then he can decide, he can let us know, if there's too many of us that want to go. I will say that I'm super excited about this, but I don't need to be a part of that process. I'm happy to be helpful and go if you want me to go for the first couple of meetings, but the whole idea of this is that it's separate from the housing partnership, has a separate sort of goals, and is working on separate things, and so I don't need to be involved in meetings.
So is it ultimately that Cam will step back and someone that came to the meeting that's not part of this group would become Cam? Kayam.
Yeah, I think it's just I think right now we're just trying to keep the momentum going, and then yes, certainly other people could step forward that we don't know about already to say yes, I want to. We talked with CHAPA. There's multiple ways it could organize itself. It could end up having a steering committee of a few people that are leading it, or it could end up having a much more, I think Brad described it as flat, much more spread out, duties. I think it's up to the group to determine how they want to organize themselves.
Okay.
But I think in the beginning, in order to get them to that place, they're going to need some help.
Yeah.
Yeah, and figuring out who those leaders are. So yeah.
And mission statement development.
Yeah.
Yes, working on their mission statement and yeah. But so it's just something that we need to keep in mind as this group. And several of you are new, and so you all should think about what you really want to do, and you may find I'd rather be on the coalition and not on the partnership, or I really want to be on the partnership. But I recognize that many of you are new and have not been doing this as long, and so may find it might be more interesting to be in the coalition because it may feel more actionable than the housing partnership. So I think that will evolve as the coalition evolves itself. So not that I want to lose anyone from the housing partnership. I'm just saying that I recognize that the coalition might be a little bit more exciting for a while. So I think that's kind of it, right?
I think so.
That's where we're at. We have the meeting notes that I think I sent to you all, which is just the pieces of paper with the notes. I thought they were going to type them up. I was expecting something typed. When she sent them, I was like, oh, you just took pictures of the notes and sent them to me. Oh, okay. Okay. But we'll at least have all that stuff. There was a word cloud. Did you open the word? The word cloud was sad, and I did not forward it to like the attendees because I was like, this is sad. It was like the one where we wrote down like, what do you think of when you think of affordable housing? And it was like the most depressing word cloud. It was like all weird. It was not only negative, but it was like weird words. I was like, this activity did not work.
Well, they said only one word. You couldn't put a phrase.
Yeah, and so like the big word was like street or so. Like, it just didn't make any sense. I was like, I'm not forwarding this on. This is not helping us at all. Great. So moving right along into actionable items. On Monday at 6 p.m. via Zoom, the property subcommittee of City Council is meeting to begin the discussion of the school reuse RFR. And I think I forwarded you all something. Okay.
It was, if you didn't get it, it's in the June 1st City Council agenda, the entire
Oh,
RFR.
this, you see, everybody has a copy of this? This is the paper copy?
That's the RFR.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Where do we find that? I don't remember.
Yeah, if you go to the City Council agendas for June 1st, it starts like halfway through that agenda.
Okay.
I also can send it again. I think I sent it, but I can resend it to you again because Jeff sent it to me a while ago.
I just can't remember.
I think the one that was in the City Council packet has like all of the agendas and
Yeah.
it's like over 100 pages.
Yeah.
But it also has, I think,
Jeff reading it out loud.
it has the entire downtown strategic plan attached to it. Yeah.
Brad has the visual.
And the housing,
And it also has the entire.
the housing plan.
Okay.
All part of the agenda.
Tell me the name of the
Yeah.
meeting that's on Monday.
So it is the City Council Property Subcommittee. Who's on that besides JP?
So it's JP, Owen Zarrett, and oh boy, I don't actually know who the third person is right now. I just know that it couldn't be me because I've literally done.
You were on that.
I've done this every step.
Yeah.
But I can't also run the meetings.
So Jeff is very much hoping that some of us will attend and very much hoping that we're going to speak in support of it. I asked him if he thought there was going to be opposition at the meeting, and he said he thinks there will be people who want to slow the process down.
So this is for a school building reuse.
It's for the Centers School, the Maple School, and the Pepin School.
Yeah.
So the 3 buildings.
Yeah.
And it's an RFR that the buildings are surplused 2 months ago now and returned to City Council. And this is the process by which we will sell off the buildings or give them away or determine what their next uses will be. And ultimately, it's City Council's decision. But hopefully, there's a lot of public input and guidance. And I think the RFR is kind of set up right now to prioritize reuse of those existing buildings for affordable housing.
All of them?
All of them. A developer could bid on 1, 2, or 3 of the buildings all at once. And
Those Center and Pepin are considered one parcel.
right, but you could separate it out if you wanted, I suppose. Demolishing the buildings would come at you'd have to do a lot more to if your proposal was to demolish the buildings and build something new on that property. There'd have to be more amenities. They'd have to meet a higher standard of energy efficiency, more public benefit. But all of that could change because it hasn't been finalized until City Council says this is the RFP that we want to send out. So
Which theoretically could be for affordable housing. for developers to do.
That's how it's currently written.
Right, and so
Yeah, okay.
the reuse subcommittee put together this proposal, and, you know, the hope is that city council looks at the proposal and says, this is great, and we don't find any need to change anything, but that's not always the case. The city council could say, you know what, this is way too complicated, we don't like this at all, we're just gonna throw it out and sell, and surplus it to the developer that pays us the most money.
Or they could hear an overwhelming community need for parking and decide to change it to say Maple School should be a parking lot.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So that's why it's really important that
Yeah.
this group and the housing coalition that's forming be present at these meetings where city council is determining
Yeah.
what the RFP, what the final version of the RFP will actually be.
Kaya. Yeah. I have sort of a complicated question because I do have some concern in favor of slowing down the process in that I don't see any reassurance that what happened with One Ferry Street won't happen here. And like, I guess I don't really know the full background of that. So like, would it be appropriate to like go through that now or like?
We can, the biggest difference is that these 3 parcels are owned by the city currently, whereas One Ferry was never owned by the city. And so it was always just a private developer doing whatever they wanted. And they had to get a special permit from the planning board to basically come up with their plan and get approvals, but what they applied for did not include affordable housing with a capital A, it included workforce housing, and then there was some problems at the state level and changing the plans and things like that. So, and that's really the big difference is that the city is in control of this process entirely.
All right, good to know. Thank you.
I'd also just say that also the Mill District, this is sort of apples to oranges, but my feeling during the permitting process during Ferry Street was that like there was a lot of interest and need of the city to have that property redeveloped. And so like that whole district doesn't really have any requirements around like what annoyed me about One Ferry Street was the parking requirements because Parsons Village was like they were tortured over the parking and how many parking spaces they were going to have and how was the fire truck going to turn around and it took 3 meetings. And One Ferry Street, they were like, well, the fire truck's going to drive down this gully and then turn around the corner. And they were like, that sounds fantastic. How easy is that? And I was like, what's happening in this meeting? But I think it was just like the city wants that property redeveloped, and like this is a really big, expensive plan that he had, and it was a private development. So it went through in such a short period of time. I was like,
And it's coming like 10 years after the first developer,
Yes.
right? The original one who like ran away with the money.
well, you're right, it sat vacant forever, and it was like, so I do think the big difference though is the city is driving the process in this case, which was not true with Ferry Street. I think that what Jeff said to me is just that the process has already taken a long time, right? Like the reuse committee has been meeting for
A year. Yeah.
And we did the downtown strategic plan, which was the sort of initiated this.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was 2019 that we started that process. I mean, this has been going, since before there was active construction on the former middle school site, this has been in the works and being planned for.
Yeah.
We've received a number of steep grants. There's been a lot of pre-development work to go into this state and just see if we could feasibly put affordable housing or any housing in those buildings and what would it take to do it. So this will be hopefully a really easy path through the council to, it's also the first time that a lot of people will actually be paying attention and hearing about it. So.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of like sentiment attached to those buildings.
Yes. So the process, just to remind everybody, is so it was introduced at City Council, then they send it to subcommittee, so that's where it's going on Mondays, the property subcommittee. Property subcommittee could meet theoretically as many times as they want, right? They could meet, it'll probably take at least 2 meetings, but it could take more. Property subcommittee, which has usually 3 counselors, will vote on it and then send it back to city council. And then there will be a public hearing at city council? Yes. So property subcommittee will say, we voted in favor 3-0, but then still it'll have a public hearing, there'll be more people paying attention to it, and then the entire council has to vote.
And that's just to get the RFP out.
Approved.
Right.
And then once it's out there for, I think, 3 or 6 months. It's a much longer timeline than we typically do for these types of projects because it's really complicated if you need like a structural engineer assessment of the building
Right.
in order to like decide if you want to bid on it. Or if you want to, check any of the data that's being presented. So then at some point in the future, there'll be hopefully a lot of proposals that the city council then has to receive and go through. At that point, does that go back to property subcommittee or?
Then it goes to property subcommittee again, and then they will create basically a selection panel of people from the community who will then go through each of the property proposals. And then if this were to stay the same, this document here, so like, it'll say like, the goals of the property are, such and such, for this criteria, highly advantageous, and then people will read through the proposals that are received, and then they will basically start grading the proposals based on what everybody has agreed upon. And then city council will then take those recommendations and then vote for a final to approve. And I think then that's it. Yeah.
Then when the
And
developer,
then there's the deed that would have to then actually sell that.
And then all the construction.
but then does the developer need to go before the planning board to get the permit?
Depends on what they're proposing. So multifamily housing in the downtown business district, I believe is just site plan approval.
Okay. I was just thinking about like what additional opportunity for public input is going to happen after that.
But if they're proposing something that's not housing, it could need planning board special permit approval, or it could need, if they're proposing demolition of the buildings, they're all historic structures, so that could need historic commission approval, and the historic commission could decide to enact a demo delay on it, because they don't want to see those structures being taken down. So there could be additional permitting.
Yeah.
So
That's why it's important.
get excited
That's why it's
because
important.
we're going to have to show up every time, even if we say the same thing over and over again. It's important that they hear over and over again that it's important, because what they will hear is that we need more parking, or I don't want affordable housing in my neighborhood, or why are you getting rid of the buildings for $1? Because the city needs money and we just went through this whole school budget thing, and like, why aren't you selling the building so that you can, so then it's not, that's not going to solve the budget problem, selling the building. So, so those are the things that we anticipate people will come to the meetings and say, maybe not Monday, but maybe the next time, or it's, public hearing. So, yes.
So in that document that was referenced from the June 1st meeting, so we took a couple of sessions in the school reuse committee to develop anticipated frequently asked questions about the properties. And we have narrative answers for each of the questions. So in terms of advocating for this, if you can familiarize yourself with what some of these questions are and what the likely answers would be, that really helps in terms of advocacy. I'll just say a really quick example was, there's a lot of sentiment in the community about creating a parking garage, which would solve basically every parking issue. But the cost of building a parking spot on the street versus building a parking spot in a parking garage. I mean, we're talking like tens of thousands of dollars for, all of the employees that need to build it, all of the permitting processes, the actual construction time, the cement that it would take, to build a structure up in the air. So even like to the average citizen, they might think, well, it's a no-brainer, just put a parking garage there. But then you need to pay for the parking garage because it's going to cost a ton of money, which means that people in Easthampton will have to pay for a parking pass or pay for daily parking. So, there's all of these extra things outside of these questions that we built into the frequently asked questions. So familiarize yourself. There's tons of information in there to...
And that's in that June 1st agenda?
Yes. Yep.
It's great. 190.
Sorry.
I believe it's also.
No, it's great. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
I think it's.
I didn't get to that page yet. Sorry.
The RFP may also be on the reuse committee page.
Yes, yeah, I believe every single thing is there, including all of our recorded meetings, the meeting minutes, so everything that you could possibly want to look at is on that site, and it's through the planning department first.
Is it? Okay.
I think so. I can double check, but
And isn't there also like incentive if the developer like kept the public playground at Maple or kept the gym? Like a lot of people want to see the gym at Pepin retained because we use it for things in the city. So if the developer was going to retain the gym at Pepin as public space like that, you get extra bonus points for that. So I think the school reuse committee did a really nice job coming up with trying to balance the things that the community said they wanted to keep, but knowing that we need more housing.
I haven't really looked at the playground at Maple. Is it the same playground that's been there?
It was redone with CPA funds 3 years ago.
Oh, okay, that's good.
I think, yeah, so it was not like, it's not like out of this world.
It's a perfectly fine playground, but it's not like...
Because they had a very tall slide that had no sides to it.
Oh, no, now they have a twisty slide, but the kids all like hang out.
Yes, yeah.
Which school, Maple?
manufactured danger.
Yeah, exactly. Get off the slide. But the neighborhood at Maple, really uses that playground, and so I think they really want to keep, the things that they like about that space, which is the playground, and maybe have some parking. But.
So, one other question is, are the way that they're numbered, is that in terms of the evaluation criteria, is that in order of importance to the city?
Meaning like...
Because affordable housing is number 1 and community connections is number 2.
Yes.
They slipped parking in there.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, are those the top 2?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Ideally, the city would prefer affordable housing in each of those buildings. If you can also tie in some kind of community engagement piece, that just makes it that much more advantageous for development. So, like the gym.
Yeah.
Or creating a new green park or something like that. Whatever you can come
Community
up with.
theater.
Honestly, there was a person that came to all of our meetings advocating for a theater space. So.
That would be nice.
There's another piece too with the reuse, demolition, or I think even if not being used for housing, there's even if no special permits are required, there's still a need to hold community meetings. And this is outside of zoning, this is specific to the RFP, so there would be more community involvement with any proposal that isn't just affordable housing.
Oh, interesting.
I guess I don't understand, what does that mean?
So let's say someone was I'm going to redevelop this for office space. I'm going to bring in, we're going to do the whole thing top to bottom office space. Well, that would require community meetings. Even if that use was allowed by right in the downtown business district, it would still require them to have community engagement meetings to talk about their plan. Whereas affordable housing, which is normally the one that requires all the extra footwork
Right.
and legwork and all the rest of that, is the one that can just go in there as easy as possible.
Except that there's public comment, so what, with the didn't you say that? That there's public comment, so then how, would that potentially change? I mean,
Yeah.
if it's not all set in stone, is it?
Right, so I think, again, if overwhelmingly they heard, we don't want this, we want parking, we don't want affordable housing, how could you do this to our community? They could change it. That's why we have to, I mean, I think we are very fortunate at this time that our city council is very supportive of affordable housing. So I think all the city councilors understand that this is really needed, but it's still, that's why it's really important that we show up, because they need to hear from us and other members of the community that affordable housing is important, because they're going to hear that
People don't want it.
that people don't want, or they don't want it. I mean, we've already heard, you know, Jeff has already heard from folks in the Maple neighborhood that why would we do that? There's going to be too much traffic. There's already too much traffic. You know, because right now it's a school and that creates a certain level of traffic. You put 25 apartments in that building, that's a whole different level of traffic that people, you know, perceive as more. Usually after you do the traffic study, you find that there's really not more traffic, but the perception is always that there's going to be more traffic.
Right.
And one of the sort of quintessential failures of this type of process is that it doesn't matter how many people are involved in the past decisions and how many community meetings have the support of everybody. What really matters is who's present at the meetings when the decision is being made.
Okay.
And so right now, it doesn't matter that we had 300 people involved.
5 years of meetings
Right.
talking about
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Meetings. What matters is the 15 people that make it to the city council's meetings over the next
Can you
couple
look up
months.
to see who the third person is?
Yeah.
That's Omar Gomez.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
all right.
He's good.
And this is one of the ways that, like, you know, everybody who was supportive of it is like, oh yeah, great, it's all in the RFP and we don't have anything to worry about. It's just going to go through, and then opposition shows up at the city council meetings. And
Yeah.
Even though this whole thing was developed based off of the strategic plan process. I mean, tons of community meetings where everybody weighed in and said, these are the things that we want the most. We hardly changed much based on what the community's feedback was. So in reality, what we've produced is actually what the community wanted. But
Now it's going to be in their neighborhood.
yes, right?
Well, I live in that neighborhood, it's fine with me.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, talk to your neighbors, talk to your, you know, people live, I mean, I know a lot of
It's
people
a
live in that
mighty
neighborhood.
neighborhood. Make it work.
Yeah.
Have
Yeah,
there ever been plans to make Cottage and Maple one way in opposite directions?
it's been looked into.
Yeah.
It won't happen.
No.
No. It's like if there's Maple is like a neighborhood street that it has.
it'd be really hard to make it one way.
It like
You have to like drive.
I mean, like, it theoretically could work, but it would take away business or traffic that our businesses rely on, putting it down a residential street. And like, the whole reason why Cottage Street is as narrow as it is
Because the sidewalks are large for foot traffic.
for foot traffic and to slow people down, because people should not be going fast through our downtown. We don't want people speeding through there. So we took a really wide thoroughfare back in 2004 or something like that, narrowed it in order to calm the traffic. And everyone was really happy about that. And now people are, you know.
When people open their car doors.
But I mean, it was looked into.
It's the trucks that kill in the winter.
It was looked into as part of the downtown strategic plan, and it was sort of like
Shut down.
hardcore. It's not going to happen. I mean,
I was just wondering, because like, you know, we're talking about Maple Street reuse, so is that an option as part of that? You know, like the school, I'm sure was a huge deterrent for making that street one way, people flying with kids around, but.
And I think it's more complicated than just like
just do it.
let's just do it. You know, like, it would
Just
have,
put signs up.
it would have a big
That's all.
impact, it would have a big impact to a residential street, but.
Yeah.
but,
It's not design.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so I will resend out the, I don't know that I have the Zoom link actually. I think it's just on the
It's on the
website.
agenda.
It's on the agenda,
So if you go to
okay.
the city council property committee,
It's also on the calendar, which can
Yeah.
be a little bit easier to get to, so you don't have to like
Yes.
open the file.
I agree. If you go to the city calendar, it's there.
They also lay out the agenda without needing to scroll through the old document, which is nice.
So I will plan to be there. I hope others will plan to be there. I will plan to speak, but I mean, honestly, we can all speak. I'm just curious to see who shows up and like what people say.
It's Monday.
It's Monday at 6 and it's via Zoom.
Will you send the link?
Yes, I will send everything I have that will make it easier for you guys to get it.
I'll go, but I won't, I would go, but I don't, I'm not gonna talk a lot because I'm so new.
That's fine, you just listen.
It's hard to advocate when you don't know the proper.
So I've seen this because it is entirely online, and one of the things that Jen has often mentioned about having the housing coalition is that you can show up there with your T-shirt that says "I support affordable housing," or your pin or whatever. But obviously for an online meeting, that's a little bit harder.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Set your Zoom profile picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Do they make banners?
it is Google, it's Google Meet, not Zoom. That technically does matter with how you integrate your accounts and stuff like that.
right.
But maybe there's,
Because that'll pull from your Gmail profile picture is what it puts up, I
I
think.
think so.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's, it was on the agenda for and planned for attendance. So
Oh.
if that was something that you wanted to,
Yeah, I don't have a good solution to that. We could all hold up pictures, signs, and say I support them. Yeah. I don't like Google Meet, so I cannot give you any technical advice on how to change your profile. I can barely get it to open, let alone. But I mean, there's no pressure to speak. I think it's actually a great opportunity just to hear what the process
Yeah.
is like.
Yeah.
I'm curious who else is going to show up, who else is going to say anything. I have no idea what to expect in terms of volume of people. So I think it'll be, sometimes it's more people show up to the full city council meeting. But I think that all of our counselors are really supportive of affordable housing. This particular group, I feel like JP and Owen tend to ask a lot of questions, so there might be, who's presenting, Jeff?
I would
As I was saying that, I'm like, who's answering the questions? Who's,
I believe, unless something changes, that Jeff and Emily Inez will be there. She was the
consultant?
consultant, thank
Okay.
you, yes.
So sometimes they ask a lot of questions, so but I think it's just really gonna depend on who shows up from the community and what they say that will be the important thing in terms of how it proceeds.
and even just like a very short, like, I'm a member of the community and I support affordable housing at these schools.
And I think it's great.
And I think affordable housing is the best use for them. Like, that's like a very
Say that
simple.
one more time.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be eloquent. I say the same thing every time.
I would mess that
I
up
think
somehow.
that.
Like, just very simple, like, your name, where you live, and you support the use of the schools for affordable housing.
Yeah.
Even like you said before, like I live in my neighborhood and I'm fine with it. Like
Right.
that's enough.
Yeah.
Right, like my kids went to school there and I'm still okay with you turning it into housing. I ran into one of my older son's teachers at the Maple School event last week, and she was like, I really just want to see it still be a school.
It shouldn't be
No.
a school.
No, it can't be a school. I understand, but no, it's not
Should
just.
say a long time ago.
But you're right, Kayam, that it is an emotional, like this reuse of those particular buildings, it does have, I hadn't thought about that, but it does have that emotional component.
people, I mean, last week, there were people there who their grandparents were with them and they went to school there. Their great-grandparents went there. I mean,
I've
people,
had generations of my family
Yeah.
school there.
So it's very emotional, I think, for some of the older residents to imagine that it's going to be something.
And the city's changing quick, and
Yeah.
a lot of people have feelings about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I will send you all the stuff that I have. I would encourage folks to like at least breeze through the RFR before Monday. I didn't actually obviously read the whole thing because I missed the FAQ part. But it's really well written and it's really well thought out, and it's it is a culmination of a lot of work and a lot of years of work. And so we will. This will be probably take through the summer right before City Council approves it, or longer, depending on how long it takes at the property subcommittee, and then the RFR actually has to go out and to hopefully get some bidders who want to do this. Okay.
I think we're realistically, we're thinking it would be the first city council meeting in August. Would we go back home? But like you said, property could sit on it for
Right.
a while.
I mean, hopefully they won't, but
It's also possible they could vote on it tomorrow or Monday, and then it could get to. Actually, it would not be a public hearing in July, because that would have already had to be set,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, there are like windows of opportunity when things need to be like advertised as a public hearing first. So sometimes that means that things come up really quickly because it's right at that window, or it ends up being much longer, like almost like a month, because we meet twice a month, and if you miss that window, then you have to go to the next meeting after that. So
Right.
yeah.
great. This isn't on the agenda. I'll call it advocacy updates. Can you give us an update on Valley CDC and their CPA grants? Is there anything to update us on?
So they have two current grants right now. One is the pre-development assessments for affordable housing.
Yeah, that's the one I was talking about.
For that one, which that was for Valley CDC to do a lot of the pre-development work for these three buildings, to assess them for affordable housing, as well as looking at other sites in the city to assess them for affordable housing. The big issue is like, why is it so hard to find a site for affordable housing? And it's because basically all of the granting agencies that fund affordable housing, the cost to develop it, you need a minimum of about 40 units in order to make a affordable housing project just economically feasible. And so to find a site in the city that can support 40 units is kind of complicated. So they are actively looking and evaluating sites. The free schools being one to three of them, depending on how you could make a project there. None of the schools themselves are actually big enough on their own to meet that 40 unit requirement.
So even if you're reusing a building, you still have to have 40?
That's like a rough estimate of like what it, because, and this is getting more detailed than I can, like, but it just has to do with like how much money and rent you expect to get from it, what your, how much it costs to create each unit.
Yeah.
Can we get 40 units and have an insider combined? Because you said you can do that as one parcel, right?
Yeah, but they may not be able to build it as one project. It might be one project, it might not be one project. You could have like, they could do a scattered site project, but then that increases the cost. So like doing 40 units in one location might be the magic number, but doing a scattered site thing, it might be 60 units scattered site in order to get that number. And then the different agencies have different requirements. You're eligible for some. I can't get into the specifics on it, but it's what you can get as a developer in subsidies depends on just like how many units you're proposing to build.
Yep.
And some of the subsidizing agencies, they don't want to deal with the project if it's going to make fewer than 30 units. And others don't want to deal with the project if it's going to be more than 65 units. So that's why it's sort of, there's all this legwork to like really find a site that fits. But so Valley CDC has been primarily focusing on the schools and a couple of the other larger sites that were in the housing production plan. They had a 10 or 15 page list I saw a couple months ago, just like properties that they had looked at, considered, are negotiating with owners or ruled out because the owner's not selling or the owner was they had a Tasty Top site on the list, but that recently sold to someone else for $2 million. And that's another piece of it that's complicated too. If you're going to have to buy the site for $2 million, that really raises the cost of can that be an affordable housing project?
Right.
Or you need more units.
Which is long story. They are still working on that project.
Will they produce a report? Like, what's the end product? It will be a report to the planning department, to CPA. I'm just curious.
I'm not actually sure what the end product is. I think ideally what they are trying to do is the end product
It's housing.
is a site that they will have negotiated a purchase and sale agreement on with an owner to develop those properties, and they will be moving forward with actually starting the development at that property. But I'm not sure at what point they're going to because pre-development goes right into development, and I'm not sure at what point they're going to say okay, we've now found a site and everything else is just sort of I guess wasted effort or other options for other developers, but they're not actually.
Well, I know they did say that if they were going to go with other properties that weren't the schools, they would share their assessment information on the schools with the city.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just to basically be like, this is what we found out. It may be information that's helpful to us, it may not, but.
I thought that was already included in the RFR.
Do you mean this RFR?
Yeah. I think Valley CDC was paid for a lot of their pre-development assessment work.
Oh, okay, okay.
So that it figured into the RFR for
Okay.
anyone to,
Take advantage of.
because they want to bid on that, but they're also, so it's all public.
Okay.
That's my
Gotcha.
understanding, that it should be all public as a part of that RFR.
I believe so, yes. Yeah.
And so do all of the units have to be affordable housing? Like there's some units around this general area that have some affordable housing and the rest market rate. Are these projects for all affordable housing?
What Valley CDC has been looking into has been 100% affordable.
Good.
But that doesn't mean that someone else could propose a project that's 80% affordable and 20% market rate. Or
Because that's what happened with Treehouse, right? That
they did, yeah. And so the Treehouse project is a mix of affordable and market rate rental and home ownership. So they were able to subsidize the cost of doing development of affordable units by selling market rate units and renting, and also supporting their foundation that does a lot with the youth that are
Marginal?
I think they're like,
Foster youth?
it's like foster, right?
Yeah.
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 marginalized.
Marginalized, but
Marginalized
not the
housing,
same
but,
thing,
yeah. And then the other project that Valley CDC has, they just got started with, is a housing sustainability and financial literacy program with up to 3 down payment assistance grants of up to $25,000 for first-time homebuyers. They're going to be doing counseling, foreclosure prevention counseling for homeowners that would need it, budgeting classes that it'll tie into their first-time homebuyer workshop classes that they run throughout the region, and just providing opportunities for people in homeowners and renters to basically have a social service that will help them with any of their housing-related issues. And that one just started.
Right.
So there's 2? They have 2?
They 2 CT.
Development assessment for affordable housing?
Yeah.
What's that?
It's a housing sustainability and financial literacy with downtown assessments.
I feel like they were like 6 or 7 months late with the financial literacy program now. The interest rates, it's like, all right.
Didn't they do one though a few years ago?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
did one in 2016.
I feel like at my first meeting, we talked about that they had just completed something.
They were just applying, like when your first meetings, that's when they were applying for this new, and they came back and forth. We went back and forth
Okay.
for several months about the proposal.
And they originally came to the planning department in like fall of 2019 to talk about it because the 2016 grant had just ended. And then COVID hit and we're like, we can't think about this right now. So everything got slowed down for them.
I think the interest rate rise might help if the prices start to stabilize. I think one of the concerns that we had, the housing partnership had when they first came to us with the proposal was just like, is this the right time to buy? How it was going to seem challenging to help first-time home buyers buy a house in Easthampton when the prices were going up and up and up, and the amount of down payment assistance available wasn't very much, and so we went back and forth, back and forth. In the end, I think everybody was happy with what the proposal was, but hopefully maybe the prices will start to stabilize and then it might be a little easier, but
Cross your fingers.
it's terrible. Yeah, the reason why I asked is because someone told me, this is how rumors start, that Valley CDC had like chosen a site where the dog park was gonna propose to be, like over by Treehouse. And like there was like a,
That is one of the sites that they are looking at, which is the sediment reuse area from the Nash Pond dredging. It was a large site that it's next to Treehouse. There's like a road that goes to it, but it's currently got about 10 feet of dredge fill from those dredge.
very viable site.
And so in order for them to look at that site, that soil, you can't build on that soil because it's all
Right.
dredged soils that don't have any structural stability to them. So all of that would need to be relocated, and that could be the end of the project if you're having to relocate all that soil. Maybe the Mount Tom quarry will open up and people want it, but.
All right, that makes sense. I don't have anything else. I don't know if anyone else has like other wild rumors they've heard they want to ask Jamie about or anything
Not
else.
rumors. I was
Yeah.
just wondering if we had any updates on the situation with 75 Oliver.
Oh, I don't have any updates.
No.
Jamie, do you have any updates?
We have some back updates on 75. Ooh. That's a no from you,
No,
Doc.
no. It's just okay. So the brief story about 75 Oliver Street is that it is owned by the city. It was the Easthampton Poor Farm decades ago.
The what farm?
Poor Farm. It was like you lived there and worked. I don't know.
Yeah.
Worked
If you
on
were
the farm.
poor?
Yeah.
Maybe.
It was like social housing, but they put you to work. I researched all about this. It's so cool that ours was the oldest
Yeah.
running one like in the country.
Up until like 1990 or something like that.
Yeah.
And then it became a single room occupancy building.
Okay, that's the one.
It's still, the building is owned by the city, the land it has a historic preservation, it has an agricultural restriction, it has an affordable housing restriction. It was operated by SMOC, South Middlesex Opportunity Council, which is a nonprofit actually in like Metro West, but operates other supportive housing units in the city. They mostly do like veterans or sober living, and they operated 75 Oliver Street. It did not have a subsidy, so basically the tenants paid a very low amount of rent, like, I don't know.
$300 a month.
$303 a month, actually, if I recall. Yeah. It's very low. You had to be income eligible to live there. They had to prove that to the city every year. But the building was in really bad shape. And we've known this for a long time, that it's in really bad shape. And so about, I don't know, 6 months ago, 4 months ago, basically after negotiations with the city, SMOC moved their residents out and relocated them elsewhere. And the building is vacant. And it is up to the mayor and the city to figure out what is going to happen to it. The complication with it is it has all these very expensive restrictions on it that make it very difficult to just like redevelop into something else because it has a historic preservation restriction on it.
So in
Historic and cultural and something else too.
It's
Agricultural and
open
affordable.
space, and-
Wow.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
In April, I think we said we were going to send a recommendation to the mayor. I don't remember for the life of me what we were going to say to her, but
I think then we decided not to.
oh, we did.
Jackie
Okay.
emailed her like during the meeting,
Yeah,
and then we
yeah.
never got an update on that.
And I think Jamie told us not to send them.
Yeah, so to just close the loop on that, that the mayor and Jessica through Pioneer Valley, or I always got their
Valley CDC.
Valley CDC.
Oh, Jessica's very passionate about $75.
I'm like Pioneer Valley CDC. No, it's the action Pioneer Valley. I mean,
Too many times.
so Valley CDC is through Jessica and are now having a conversation with the mayor, and I don't know what the result of those conversations are, but so the mayor's been working on that.
So we're not going to send anything to her from this committee?
I do see this note where I wrote memo to the mayor. I feel like then we decided not to. Or maybe we didn't need to.
I don't. The last thing I remember was Jackie sending the email.
And then we don't know what happened.
I love a working meeting.
Yeah. Should I just send a text? We're like, I can find out. I'll ask Jackie. Ask Jackie what
I
happened.
mean, the mayor, my understanding is the mayor wants to find a path forward to continue that building as affordable housing and is looking for our organization to work with.
So it would be pointless for us to really send anything to her.
I mean, no.
Okay, that's
No. I mean, like,
But I mean, what if she already thinks, if she's already on that path, like,
yeah.
Reinforce it.
I guess.
And whether or not, she wants, assistance or help with
Right.
it. Planning department's been pulled in to some meetings and things like that. Like as an advisory committee,
I'm happy to write a memo. I'm happy to say just, hey, Housing Partnership is really invested in this property. I can send it out to you guys to look at, and we really, if you need any help or want our opinion,
Yeah.
or just if you want to, keep us in the loop.
we'd love this to remain as affordable housing,
Yeah.
and it's very important. Yeah, I'm happy to read. Thanks, Zach, for bringing that back up. I kind of forgot about it. I will draft something. I will circulate it for comment. If you comment, make sure you just comment back to me, not to the entire group. We all learned in our open meeting law training.
Don't reply all.
Don't reply all. Yes, I will draft a memo and circulate. I don't think it'll hurt, and I agree that I think we want to make sure that she knows that we know that it's vacant
Yeah.
and that we want to see something happen there.
Rental assistance program is ending June
Oh.
30th.
I take off my housing partnership hat and put on my Community Action Pioneer Valley hat. Rental assistance is ending June 30th. We actually looked at the balance today and I was like, oh, we almost spent it all.
Awesome.
We only have like 19,000 left, which was way less than I thought. I mean, I thought we had more than that left.
It was like 50 or 60,000 towards the end of April. So
That's awesome.
So we've spent a lot of it. We have had the city council approved a change a couple months ago to allow folks who needed to request a second round of $3,000 who had already received $3,000 if they were in arrears again or had a documented reason why they couldn't pay their rent. And so we've approved a couple people who needed the additional $3,000. But yeah, I mean, we've spent a lot of it. Actually, I mean, I will, we'll do the final report and I can always present to city council or CPA again. But I mean, it was $236,000 in financial assistance, and we spent over $200,000, which, by the way, surpasses Amherst's program. They spent less, we spent more than Amherst. Their program was ridiculously hard, and ours was very easy to qualify for, which is we should also be very proud of ourselves because. But yeah, I mean, it went really well, and so I didn't think we were gonna. I thought we would have a balance of like 50,000, and I think the balance is going to be much less than that. So
About how many people got assistance?
that's a great question.
65.
Yeah, I was gonna say like probably 65 to 70. I would say off the top of my head. So
That
yeah.
gives me an idea.
Households or individuals?
Yes.
Yes.
I think I think one report had 47 households, if I recall. So I'm guessing it is more like 65 households. But I will prepare a lovely report for all of you.
And some of them did receive double subsidy.
Yes, a handful received it twice.
Right.
If you were subsidized, you only received arrears because you can't pay rent going forward if you're subsidized because it affects your rent. But everybody else, if you were not subsidized, you got a flat 3,000, which was really huge. And still, I mean, I won't get into details, but the one that I approved yesterday, because our manager's out, is, people who are still struggling with COVID. So it was a COVID rental assistance program, so everyone had to have a COVID reason, but people who are still having, employment impacts from COVID, or more recently, like serious health issues from COVID, people who had COVID and who can't go back to work. And so it's really heartbreaking, actually, like 2 years later, to have folks that are still behind because they either can't go back to work or haven't been able to, went back and then lost their job because of COVID, things had changed and then their job closed again. And
So to just pick up on that, there was conversation way back in 2020 about whether or not Easthampton would be interested in actually having a sort of, not a temporary rental assistance program, but a permanent rental assistance program. And I think it'd be great, Jenna, if in your sort of wrap-up report back to partnership and CPA, if you could provide any insights as to like the need for a full-time rental assistance program.
I definitely can. I will share with all of you. I work at Community Action. So Community Action since 2004 has had a grant from the state of Massachusetts for homelessness prevention. And it's federal money that came to the state, and then we received it. And so we spent about $35,000 a year on homelessness prevention for families and individuals. Some who also got RAFT. So RAFT is the state program that helps with homelessness prevention and rental assistance, specifically mostly for families. During COVID, they had like a gazillion dollars. You could get like $25,000 in RAFT. Usually it's about $7,000. So historically, Community Action's program always like filled the gap when someone already got RAFT and needed or owed more than RAFT was going to help with. We were still able to help. The state made a decision this year that they were not going to use that money for homelessness prevention anymore, and they poured all of it into their individual shelter system because there's a huge need on the state level for individual sheltering. And so they took their like $5 million that they got from the feds for this program and put it into the individual sheltering system. which means agencies like Community Action are losing $35,000 of homelessness prevention dollars that we would have spent on families and individuals. So we're trying to like fit ourselves into this weird like individual sheltering system application to do some work so that,
What does that mean, individual shelter?
so homeless shelters for individuals.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Sorry. So it's like basically trying to, the homeless shelters for individuals on the state level has always been contracted by individual shelter. They've
Yeah.
never done a statewide, hey everybody, we have $87 million, here's what we want you to do. And so it's kind of a mess, basically. And the like cost varies by the region, and so the state's trying to consolidate it. But what they did in doing that is they took away all this money that we were using for homelessness prevention before someone gets to shelter. So a lot of people think it's actually better to help people before they actually end up in the shelter. So my point is, JV, that actually I think that there could be a need. We're really concerned that there's not going to be enough prevention dollars for families, and that RAFT will not be able to always solve the problem. The state, like $7,000, some people need $10,000, or they need it again in the same year. And so, Community Action's been thinking about like, well, how are we going to replace that $35,000, and where are we going to get that money so that we can keep doing that work? And so,
$35,000 was for the CAPV region.
it was for all of Franklin and Hampshire County. That doesn't include the staffing dollars. That's just the money we actually gave out to clients. It's about
$35,000 is not very much for the
No.
40 communities in the region.
It's not, and it was very, needed money. Also, that particular source of funds was very strict, and so it would, if we could help people, like you had to be in court about to be evicted before you could get it. So it's much easier to do it before you're at that stage. But I think it would be interesting, and I would, obviously have to recuse myself from decisions of the housing partnership. And I mean, but if the partnership wanted to consider asking CPA to envision a more permanent or semi-permanent pool of funds for Easthampton residents, even if it was like $5,000 or $10,000 a year, I think that would help fill that gap for folks who are not going to be able to access some of the resources that they've been able to. Because RAFT, even though RAFT is a great resource, the state's going to shrink what's available for RAFT back to the $7,000 to $10,000 per family. And in our region, you go through Wayfinders, which is really, even though they've done a great job transitioning to an online application, Wayfinder serves all of Hampden and Hampshire County. And so it's a lot of people to be served by one organization, and anyway, that's my soapbox about homelessness prevention.
I feel like that fund is like a really easy yes for me personally. Like that should be, that shouldn't really be a question to me personally. Like,
So
I know that's not universal, but.
Well, so when Community Action does its final report, I mean, because we've been very fortunate that Councilor Rist has been like a huge champion of this particular program and kept saying, maybe we should extend it, I would love to get rid of the COVID restriction, because even though we still have folks who have COVID related issues, it's not everybody, and so it narrows the pool. But we'd be happy to propose, here's what you could do with $10,000 a year.
Right, because one of the things that, going way back, the Housing Partnership has always kind of gone to the CPA in order to request funds and then put up RFPs for that work. And then literally, we only always have two respondents of Community Action or Valley CDC, or maybe sometimes Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. More recently, we've seen that Valley CDC has applied directly to CPA for those funds. So it would not be unheard of for Community Action to come to the Easthampton CPA and say, here, we're going to propose this program. And that would be great, because it would save all of the RFP work that we have to do for one applicant, and you could put together your proposal and bring it to CPA directly.
And we could support it.
And the Housing Partnership could support it, as the Housing Partnership has done for the Valley CDC applications.
Okay.
Just throw that out as an idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm glad you brought it up.
You have to recuse yourself at last too.
Right, I have to recuse myself last. Yeah, I mean, I think that'd be great. So thanks, that's a good idea. But yeah, so that program's wrapping up June 30th. So in July, I will have the final bill for you, and then I will be able to produce a report that just talks about what everything did, and I can bring it to CPA or City Council, or I can share it with all of you so you can see. But it's been very successful. So.
Thank you for all of your hard work on that.
Yeah.
And all your staff's work on that.
Really, like, I don't do any, I send the bills to Jamie, really, that's the hard work. They do all the hard work, and it is hard work, talking to folks and learning their stories and helping them through the process, so. And I know we have a couple that we're still scrambling to get the documentation from the landlord so that we can get it all finalized in time.
Can people still apply?
No,
Oh, okay.
because it ends June 30th, so right now we're just
Right.
like trying to get the final, the landlord has to sign something and say they'll agree to take the money and let us, you know, we did the W-9 from the landlord, and so those, sometimes the landlords drag their feet getting that stuff in, so they're trying to do that so we can pay them on Tuesday.
So is there anything in place starting now that anyone could apply for that's similar?
Yes, I mean,
I mean,
anybody.
it's raft.
Yes, and anybody can always call Community Action, and we have sources of funding now, and we help people apply for RAFT, and the staff, you know, we have some things that people can apply for and get funds for, so that's still available. So that's always an option if you have anyone that you know that's struggling with anything, rent, utilities, need help with food stamps, need help finding a resource for something else. That's what the staff does, is help them, you know, make sure they know where all the resources are. And we anticipate, if the gas prices don't come down by next year, that it's going to be really people will run out of their fuel assistance very quickly, which they were already doing in the spring, but will happen even more next winter if the prices don't come down. Okay, you had 2 announcements.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone else have anything else they want to chat about?
Are we meeting in July and August?
So historically, we don't meet in August. However, I will be on vacation during our July meeting. So I don't know what we want to do about that. We could move it. It's supposed to be on the 28th. You could meet without me. Which is fine. But I'll be in Maine.
I'll also be on vacation.
So we could not have a meeting in July because hopefully the Housing Coalition will meet in July. And also there'll be probably some property subcommittee meetings that we will want to attend in July. So I think it would be okay to skip July. I will do the memo about 75 Oliver Street and circulate it to all of you.
Okay.
But then do you want to meet in August? It would be August 25th. I would be hesitant to skip 2 months just because I feel like we might have things. Also, things might be happening in early August that we will note. I will send you emails about if there's city council.
Why do we not meet in August?
We just usually don't.
Oh, okay. Right, yeah.
It's always really hard to get committees. With everyone's vacation schedules, it's just like, you're like, oh, we could meet, but if one person doesn't show up, then we don't have a quorum.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
I mean, the other option is we could meet earlier in August because instead of waiting till the 25th, if we thought there was things we really wanted to talk about, like maybe we anticipate there's going to be this huge crowd at city council for the public hearing, and we want to be like really organized, we could always meet earlier than the 25th in August.
We can also put up polls. The one exception for communication via email.
Oh, is a doodle poll? I could put out a doodle poll about August meetings.
Meeting dates and things like that.
All right, why don't I do that since not everybody's here? Doodle poll August. But we will plan to not meet in July. Okay. Councilor Riley?
All right, so first bit of information I wanted to share with you all is in the coming weeks, there's going to be a new advocacy group starting up in Easthampton. Probably, I think it was in maybe late March or early April, Councilor Peak and I responded to some concerns at the Easthampton Housing Authority that the residents felt that the management of the housing authority was not being fair and equitable to the residents. They certainly provided a lot of documentation and photo evidence that supports that claim. They worked with an organization out in Boston, and they are forming their own administrative group, which gives them access to board meetings and all of the public documents at the Easthampton Housing Authority. So that election for their leaders is this Saturday.
I'm going to work at one of those sites.
You are going to do that?
Me too.
Are you?
Nice. That's so great to see. Yeah, so, they seem really energized. They're really great at advocating for themselves. So, I would imagine in the future, there's a possibility of some overlap between the work that you all are doing on this committee and the types of things that they're advocating for as well. So that's something to keep an eye out for. And then the last thing, I don't know if everybody had seen the information, but Councilor Rothschild has resigned from City Council. So that'll be effective June 30th. And then just because of the way the structure of our committees work, the president of City Council cannot be a chair of any committees. And Omar Gomez and myself were on the committee with Lindsay Rothschild. So this still has to go through a procedural vote, but if everything goes according to plan, I'll be moving into the chairperson role of the appointments committee. And
Which committee?
appointments. And it's nothing to panic about. I'm going to do things a little bit different. I'm going to be a little more engaged.
Nothing to pay.
No, because the appointments committee is, for the most part, has been very hands-off with the committees. I just want to be a little more present with the chairs. And then, something to consider is when we go through the interview process for new appointees, I would like for the committees to come up with a handful of questions that they would like us to be able to ask the new members. So that way, if 6 months from now there's somebody that wants to be on the Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership, then I'll have a master document. These are some questions that you all would like to ask. And then, in that interview process, we'll pull a couple of those out. And my goal is to do that with every committee. And then the last piece is to just try to have more consistent information on city websites. I feel like the partnership is one of the more consistent. But making sure
That's all Jamie.
it's all,
we don't even we have no control over the website.
but just something that I've heard over the last few months when we were trying to recruit people into different committees is that they didn't know enough information about the committees that they're interested in. So I just want to create some kind of a uniform template that we can have on the city website where, this is who the chair is, this is the contact information by email if you have questions, this is when it meets, here's, all that kind of stuff. So
Love it.
I'm just I'll be in everybody's hair for a few months if everything goes according to plan, and then after that, it should just be business as usual. So
I love it. I feel like we've been very fortunate and lucky that we've got such great new members, but each time I was like, what? Who? Like, what? Like, oh, you have a new member here. I was like, oh, okay. Like, maybe I could have reached out and said, like, I would just, what I said to Lindsay before is that I would just love to know so that we could proactively reach out to the new person and say, hey, this is what we do. Like, and so I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, so the plan initially would be, in terms of the actual appointing process, none of that changes. That can't change. So someone would apply to the mayor, and then the mayor, well, actually, you all know, you did the whole process. So
Just recently.
Once it goes to city council and then it gets sent to the committee,
Yeah.
at that point, the day after, for those respective committees, I'm going to reach out to the chairs. Here's somebody that's applied. If you feel like you want to introduce yourself, invite them to one of your meetings in the meantime. And then I will also email that person individually to start the planning process for meeting with the appointment committee, because sometimes, I mean, with the way COVID has been, and hybrid meetings and now coming back into person, it's been very difficult to track people down to be able to have those organic conversations. So I just want to make it a little bit more structured and uniform. And I think in the end result, it'll be more communication, it'll be better for everyone involved.
Yeah,
So,
I think that sounds great.
okay. That's it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, Casper.
Yes.
So, can you also work into that the applicant needs a little more follow-ups? Like, it was like I applied and then like 3 weeks later I got an email and then like 2 months later I got a letter.
Yeah.
And like the whole time it was like, are they still looking at
Yeah.
it? Like,
Okay.
You
So-
felt like maybe you weren't gonna get selected.
Yeah, like
Or
I'm
just
sitting on the
didn't
mayor's
know.
desk.
Yeah.
there
for
was
a
just like
while.
no
Yeah.
anything. And then
They might
there's nobody to
application
ask.
off.
There's no information on who could I ask. So even if
Sure,
it was
sure.
just, if you have any questions during this process, please reach out to.
Okay. Yeah. I can.
Or more transparency about how long the process takes.
Yeah.
Like, this could take 3 months. or
And
this-
also what, the thing that was mysterious to me was, what are they, like, could they say no? Because,
Yeah.
you know, like, I know that they can, but like,
Yes.
it felt very, I kept being told you're going to be vetted.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, like, in what way? You know, I don't have anything to hide, but it
Right,
felt
right,
very
right.
strange.
Yeah,
It
you
felt
know-
very kind of weird.
I mean, here's the thing. I think I'll just speak historically from what I know. I wasn't there when it was happening, but I mean, even when I came onto the partnership 2 years ago, I think it was you and Jackie and Connie and Ken. And there was, I mean, there like half of the spots were still open. You know, the Veterans Council was basically had one member. So I think that the initial way to remedy that was if we can find people that actually care about the city and they want to get involved, we're not going to really say no unless there's some kind of a red flag that jumps
Yeah.
out.
Right.
So, you know, I don't know how much that's going to change in the near future, but I know that we've started filling up a lot of these spots now. So it may start to look like, you know, when a term expires, if that person chooses that they don't want to be on the specific committee, then we might actually, you know, suss out some of that vetting a little bit more.
What do you mean? I'm just curious.
So as an example, right now, if somebody is appointed by the mayor and they don't have time to come to the appointment committee process to do an interview, and it's not like a stuffy interview. It's just conversational, get to knowing people on the council. That even as a general rule, if they don't come, we would still vote to move it along. I think that going forward, when those seats start to become more scarce, that it would be fine to either vote no or to vote to abstain because we don't have enough information.
Yeah.
As far as the policy process goes, even if the city council doesn't take up a vote, after a certain amount of time, that person gets appointed anyways. So, you know, ultimately these things are up to the mayor's discretion.
Yeah.
And it would take an egregious situation for somebody in the city to say no.
I've seen it twice. And I think both times the applicant stepped down, rescinded their nomination before the appointments committee or the city council could let them know.
Gotcha. I mean, and it's, you know, it's just one of those things. I mean, there hasn't even really been an issue to dig in on these kinds of things and really sort it out, because I think we're blessed in this community to have so many engaged citizens that, you know, have something that they're passionate about, and we have so many committees that someone could, participate in the political process. So
Right.
it's just there in case we need it, but
Right, like if somebody wanted to join this committee, like I thought about this and was wanting to deal with affordable housing, but from not a less supportive angle, like wanted to curtail it or wanted to, like, I don't know, something. Like I mean, I don't, nobody here feels that way, but when I was applying or in some part of the process, I thought, I wonder what happens if you are interested in housing, but you're not.
That's interesting.
You're not supportive of the mission.
Yeah.
If
Like
you
they
have a
want to
different
join this to prevent affordable
Right,
housing?
something like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, but
Would that be
somebody
a
a
reason
little
to
less.
reject it? Or to reject the applicant?
I mean, I think it could be, but I mean,
Yeah.
it all depends. I mean, I can only speak for myself, right? There's a whole body of us that have varying opinions on these things.
Right.
If it were me, if I felt that someone was going to intentionally obstruct
Yeah.
good policy business on behalf of the people, then I would feel inclined to say no and voice that specific reason.
Yeah.
But I mean, every person that's come across my desk so far, I mean, it's people that genuinely care. Like they actually want the
Yeah.
city to be a better place. And I mean, God, that's like the worst problem you could ever have in city government is people that want to make it better. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's also, I think, hard for this committee, but you see it more in, like planning boards where you're like, you have a person who's nominated is like, I don't want to, like, I'm going to say no to anything that's greenfield development. And they have another person that's like, I'm pro-business and everything. Doesn't matter if they're trampling over wetlands. Like, I'm gonna vote in favor. Like, so you tend to see those more like ideological splits on like a permanent
Right, right.
than on like a.
We don't have a lot of
Advocacy
power.
board.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, right. That's true too. Yeah,
Can't really obstruct much.
this
Just
one is
real
this one's a little
annoying
bit
to
different than the Board of
We'll
Health.
all go to your meeting and talk.
The meetings have been changed to Wednesday.
But yeah, so those will be some likely changes coming up, unless it's entirely possible that someone else could become chair. But it just makes the most sense to not move everybody around midterm. So
And is the person who was like didn't win but had votes, isn't there somebody?
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
yeah.
Because now there's only one woman.
I know. Yep, it's true.
I wrote a letter to Omar just saying, pointing that out. Because it just,
Yeah,
it's kind of,
yep, I agree. I mean, I guess.
it's just the way it shook down. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
nobody's fault. It's just,
Right.
it's a little bit jarring then to see.
Yeah, because we had a lot of women representation on city council last term,
Yeah.
and a lot of that has changed since then. That's true.
Yeah.
The only thing that I can say is, there are 4 at-large positions. Anybody that's a resident in the city can run for them, and I'm 100% okay with flooding the ballot for that. So if there are women that you know, or there are people of color that you know, LGBTQ people that you know,
Yeah.
that you think would be really good leaders for the city that can also represent everybody, encourage them to run, because there was only one extra person running for these 4 seats, and then there was one write-in campaign. So, for the most part, everybody that took out papers and got signatures got elected.
Yeah.
And we have ranked choice voting in place now. So, if we had 7 or 8 people running for these 4 open seats, then, people could start to vote, well, I want this person and this person and this person, but if not this person,
Right.
whatever.
I
Yeah.
that.
I think that diversity is really important on the board, all boards. But
And again, I'm not being critical. All of a sudden I thought, I took down the list. And
Yeah.
I thought, that's
Yep, I know.
a
It's
challenge.
also something worth being critical of.
Being what?
It's worth being critical
Yeah.
of. Like, you don't have to apologize for being critical.
Right,
Yeah,
I
that's-
agree. Yep,
Right. I'm just trying to be.
yes.
I'm usually at the first meeting I'll be polite and then I'll.
Oh, something to look forward to.
But anyways, that's a lot of that was kind of off topic, so I apologize, but just
all interesting stuff. But I think we're ready to adjourn our meeting at 7:40. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Second?
Motion.
Aye. All right.
Hi.
Stop the recording.